Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today's going to be a little bit different. I've just dropped a vlog and I wanted to give you some sort of behind the scenes look about how I created that vlog. The link's up here if you want to check that out, but I'm going to take you through the steps a little bit and give you a little bit of understanding why I put these shots in, how I created those shots, using a bit of sound engineering as well to give it a little bit more extra value to that video. If this is something you're into, it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscription below and follow my journey of becoming a content creator. So let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back. So what we'll do is I'll go through a segment of the video, pause it, and then go back to the beginning and just sort of break it down and just sort of talk you through some of the sound ideas I went through, the clips, how I transitioned from one clip to the next, and just things like that. So yeah, let's get into it. Too often we're caged in our own minds, paralyzed by fear, by judgment, by comparing ourselves to the ones that inspire us. We have the visions inside us that are waiting to come out, but yet are trapped by no one else but ourselves. We have the power to inspire, the power to live the life we want, and the best way to do that is to just create. Cool, so if we go back to the beginning of that and I'll talk you through the steps I went through. So if we look at the very beginning here, there was 2 or 3 really quick shots, and like super quick, so I think it was about 1/8 of a second. And with each one of those shots I added in what they call a DSLR camera sound effect. So it helped transition to one clip to the next. So if we listen to that, so that sounds that. And then what we did from there, we went into the shot of the beach. But over top of that, I've got this overlay which I found online, and I thought it added a bit more texture to it, a bit more depth to the shot. So you can see here, I just added that and I broke it up. See, I've put a gap in between each of the clips. And then how I made that appear like that, I came over to here, my blend mode, and clicked on soft light, and that's how I made that image look. Too often we're caged in our own minds. So I've got my voiceover down here, so here's my voiceover file. So I'll just pause that for now while we go through this clip, but you'll see some other effects here. So you could hear that background noise of the cinematic bass drop as well as the wind. So if I also just mute the audio for a second, and if I just play the sound effects, did you hear that sound, that bass sound? And then I added in the wind, because within the wind you can actually see the trees blowing. You can imagine that the wind be blowing, off the beach. So I wanted the audience to feel like they're part of the video. So having that sound bites or engineering, whatever you call it, really helps engage with the audience as well. So that's why I wanted to add in those little subtle sounds underneath the soundtrack. So if we just keep playing that. So then what I did is I added a glitch from one scene to the next, so you can sort of see this transition here as a glitch scene, but I also added in that overlay just to give it that little bit, a bit more dynamic to it. So if we see here, see that, again, you can see that overlay I added in just before. I've also applied it to this part of the video as well. As well as that, I used the glitch sound effects to give it that transition sound from one clip to the next, but also added in a whoosh to give it a bit more of a oomph to it as well. Is that a oomph? Yeah, you know what I mean. So we added that. So if we keep scrolling across, you can see here in this shot here of the notepad, there's also an overlay here. So this here is an overlay which I just grabbed online and I dropped on top of the video. I've come over to the blend mode, which is on screen, so that helps create that see-through, but again, just create some more depth to the shot as well. Scrolling through, so some shots of me writing my story. This shot here of me, rather than just thought of me just being just the full screen, I reduced it down to about 80%, then added some textures to it. So there's a couple of texture layers I've got to here. So you can see here I've got the text border on the outside. So if I turn that off and on, you can see the text border, as well as what they call an original film overlay as well. So that really grainy kind of a look to it. You can see here that grainy look's playing through. That's this section here. So if I turn that off and on, you can see that. What I actually did is I put that into subtract, and that created that. And then going from this scene to the next beach scene, I actually, when I filmed it going past a pole, and that pole became the mask to help go into the next shot. So if I show you this, see how it goes from one shot to the next, just by using the pole as a mask. But I've also got some background going on, background noises going on. So you've got the whoosh sound, but it's also as well as like a wind chime sound that sort of helps create a bit more depth to that shot, because you've also got the wind blowing through. Because when the viewer's watching it, seeing it's going to be a beach, you know it's going to be a windy sort of feel to that shot. So I wanted to sort of add a bit of depth or texture to that shot. So if we listen and watch that. So how I also did that transition, I did a speed ramp. So I speed ramped up going past the pole, so it goes past quite quickly, and then go straight, and then slow it right down going into this shot here. And this shot here of me writing in the pad, in the notebook, rather than just being a flat, just a still image, I actually keyframed it. So at the beginning, it zoomed in a little bit. So then as we go through the shot, it actually draws, it sort of pulls away from the notepad. So if you watch this, see how it starts in close and draws out. Again, just creating some more depth to it. We go into this shot here. So this shot is of me writing in the notepad, but I've double layered it. So I've taken the same shot and just added it in twice. So if I turn this top layer on and off, could sort of see to the right here. How I did that was pretty straightforward, was come over here and I just changed the position of it. So move it back and forward and sort of see that changes that position there. But I've also got a couple of other layers going on as well. So again, there's that light overlay I've added to on top of that, but also again that a really original, what they call original film grainy look to it. Just again, just something, a bit of a texture to it, something different rather than just being just a one-off shot. Keep pushing through. So we hear that sound drop. So see, hear that sound drop. So what we call a cinematic bass drop. So you see here, and then it drops straight into a cinematic bass. So if you hear that, and that was a great way to going from creating more of a dramatic effect, going from me wrapping up the book to hitting that sign saying just create. Because remembering also I've got my voiceover going on. If we listen to that as well as the soundtrack going together, so if we add it all in and hear that all together. To live the life we want, and the best way to do that is to just create. So that helps going from transition from one shot to the next, just by using sound bites or audio, or using the music, or just little things like that. So if we keep pushing through onto the next shot, so if we look at that. So this shot here was a really slowly filmed, like a 120 frames per second at a really shallow depth of field. I think it was about an f1.4, I think it was, because what I wanted was the focus to be on the phone and have that blurry foreground, just to really create a bit more zoning in on that subject of the phone. So these shots here were just sort of a good way to transition from being in the office to actually going out to the beach and taking photos. So it's always nice to get the audience to follow you on the way, rather than just cutting straight from the office to the beach. It's to take the audience on the journey of actually becoming going to the destination. So these shots here was just a really, again, shallow depth of field shot with, again, I think it was a 1.4, but I kept it at a normal speed. This shot of me here with the shaker, I actually put my camera up on my dashboard and then just face it towards me, and then just started driving and just shake it and just recorded that. Keep pushing through. So now we're at the location. So what I started doing is I put the camera on the gimbal, and these created some really cool gimbal shots. You can see through here, this is at a 120 frame per second shot on the gimbal, and I wanted it to look like they were sort of narrowly going through the bridge. As well as that, I also added a title text down the bottom left hand corner here. I created that myself in a program called Apple Motion, and then I can use that in Final Cut Pro. So the cool thing about that is I can change it every time I use that location. I can just change the words for it rather than having to build a new one every time. Again, in this shot here, rather than just me walking away, I wanted to create something a little bit different to it. So just sort of change it up by just using that one image, but then just cutting it up and then just sectioning and fast forwarding it, cut it up, fast forward it, just to give you this look here. Again, that was a gimbal shot going past the horse. I just grabbed that as I walked past, 120 frames per second, to sort of give that cinematic, really slow motion, buttery look. So with this shot here, I had the camera on a gimbal going up towards the gate, making sure that my hand was blurred out, but also giving it the motion of me opening the gate. And then this shot here, I actually put the gimbal on a mound of dirt, which was next to the gate, and then filmed myself, quickly ran back through the gate, turned around and come walking back through, go through the shot, and then pick up my camera and keep walking. So this shot, again, I just wanted to look like I was just walking. I want to add a bit more dynamic to it. So this is what you call a clone freeze frame. There's definitely a bunch of tutorials on there. It's super quick and easy to do. All you do is you go into your frame, you freeze a section of it, take that frozen section, put it on top of here. So you can see I've got the different layers, and then you mask around it. See how it's got the red dots around the mask? And so if I turn that on and off, you can see that there is each clone as well. So as I walk into each shot, everything unfreezes and keeps going. Did you hear that bird sound in the background? So again, because we're walking into the forest, I wanted the audience to feel like they were part of the trail, they were part of the shot. So if you hear that, if I turn off the audio for a second and then just play that background sound. So you can hear the birds tweeting, you can hear the wind in the trees, you can hear other effects going on as well. So now I want to go transition from the forest to me talking to the camera. So I thought a cool way I would do that is take this shot here and then duplicate it and then reduce it down to 80%, duplicate it again, put it down to 60%, duplicate it again, and then 40 and then 20, as well as that adding these sound effects here. Now I wanted to make it sound like it's a camera shot, you know, zooming in every time, but it's actually the sound of handcuffs being used. So if you can hear this, so I wanted it to sound like a camera, but it's actually handcuffs.
Hey guys, welcome back to another vlog.
So this is just me using my phone as I'm walking along. I'm just holding my phone up, talking to the phone. Pretty straightforward, nothing too fancy in that. So we'll keep fast forwarding that. Oh, the other thing as well is when I use the music, I actually reduce the sound of the music and put a muffled overlay on top of it, because you don't want the music drowning out what you're trying to say, but you also still want it to be there just to sort of give it a bit more volume and a bit more depth to the shot again as well. So if I turn that on and off.
Hey guys, welcome back to another vlog. Just out at...
So you can hear that background sound working as well.
Sunset shots. I've got my...
So I'll fast forward it through. This is me talking all the way through. If I keep fast forwarding, and then we get into the next shot. So what I've done here is, you can see there's a soundtrack coming up here, and you can see I've gradually increased the sound. Rather than just cutting straight to the sound being full noise, you just gradually increase it. So if we can listen to that.
Quick, but let's get into it. Let's go.
So that transition was what you call a pan transition. So it just panned down. So it just goes from one shot to the next. I've also used a swoosh soundtrack overlay to sort of give it a bit more effect as well. So this shot here was shot at 120 frames per second, and so it took a while to get to where I'll just mute that. It took a while to get to the shot of the sign, so I thought it helped to speed that up. What I'd actually do, it looked like I was drilling in again, like we did with the tree shot. So then I took a bunch of shots. This here was a 120 frames per second, and then I just put the gimbal on the ground and then just recorded myself taking photos. So then how I transitioned from the video to taking photos, it would just sound like I was taking, I used a DSLR camera soundtrack, and that transitioned from me taking the photo to actually the shot of the photo. So if I show you what I mean by that, and straight away it clicks into the photo, and you see on the photo here it draws you into it as well. So again, I keyframed it from a little bit wider out, and then it's sort of zooming in as you go through the shot, and it goes from shot to shot. So if I can show you that. And then going on to, and then continue on doing the same thing meanwhile while the soundtrack is playing. So if we keep fast forwarding all the way through, turn that sound off. And this one here, so this transition here, you'll hear a bit of a whoosh, or sort of bassy sound, so if you can hear that. And again, you can imagine that the wind is blowing through the flax or through the trees, so you want the audience to feel like they're there. So that's why I added the backdrop of the sound. So if I put on the music back on, you can hear that sound subtly in the background. And then just continue on doing the same thing all the way through here, just me taking photos and then clipping to the next shot. Oh, close that. And so then me transitioning to talking to the camera.
Did I miss out on the sunset and I didn't get to climb up top of that hill?
So if I fast forward through that, it's pretty straightforward of me just talking to the camera. And then as I transition from one clip to the next, I actually changed audio tracks as well. So you can see this here audio track is sort of is getting turned down, and this audio track here is getting turned up. So if you hear the difference there.
You know, just put yourself out there and just give it a crack. All right, time to pack up, head back to the car.
So this shot here, I sped up till I think about 400 times faster, and you can sort of make it a lot quicker. But I also put, turn that off. But I also put on some motion blur as well, so it gives it that actual blur of movement. And then what I did to go from one shot to the next, you can hear in the soundtrack there's a bit of a, is it a bass drop? Do you call it a bass drop? You can see here there's a drop, see the dip there? So I'm going to use that sound as a transition to the next clip. So if you play that, and so it punches into the next shot. So that was another way to transition from one shot to the next. So again, using the sound as, using the visuals of the sound as well together to create a bit more movement in the shot and encourage the audience to come in again. And that was just me sort of rounding out talking to the camera. So there you have it, guys. I hope you got some value out of this. Again, this is something I'm going to be continue to be doing, so it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button below. I'd love for you to tag me in your videos about when you create your vlogs to sort of show you've used the same sort of techniques in your videos. The remembering is you'll use the soundtrack, use the sound bites of like background sounds I've used with the cameras for example, or the wind. Incorporate those into your videos to sort of give it a bit more depth. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. I'll see you then. Woo!